Begin transmission. Hello, everybody. It's Chris, aka Starrapter, here for another episode of outerrimtransmission. It's not just any episode. This is a milestone episode, everybody. This is episode 100 of the podcast. Technically, I was doing 8 episodes of these things, or 7 episodes doing interview shows before Outer Rim Transmission became the podcast that it is today with these two gentlemen here, Milton and Ben. So yeah, we're going to take a little time to just talk about, hey, how things been going as far as podcasting. You know, a lot of podcasts, I'm sure, probably don't even last nearly as long as 100 episodes. So that's a triumph in its own right. So yeah, we're going to talk, of course, about that. But we're also here to talk about The Bad Batch Season 2, Episode 13, Pabu, as well as The Mandalorian Season 3, Episode 3, Chapter 19, The Convert. Yes, it's trying to remember those off the top of my head without screwing them up is a triumph in its own right sometimes. But anyway, how's it going, Milton? I didn't see you last week. Oh, can you guys hear me?
Ooh, can I?
Yep, I can hear you. I can hear you, Chris.
Okay, I think he was muted. What's up, Milton?
Nope, I can hear.
Uh-oh. He's coming in and out. He's coming in and out, everybody.
Yeah. I'm good, fellas. I was glad as when I'm normally not. What? Okay, there we go.
There we go.
When I'm not here, that's when real life is in. So I apologize for not being here last week. But no, I've been good. Just ready to get back to talking some Star Wars and talking about these incredible episodes of Mandalorian and Bad Batch this week. So let's get into it.
Incredible. All right, I'm ready for the hype here. Bring on the hype. Bring on the excitement. What about you, Ben? How's your week been? Just tell us how it is, man.
Yeah, it's been a good week so far. Had a good time watching Star Wars like normal, and then of course, ended the week off by celebrating our 100th episode of the podcast. Like, what a better time, to celebrate this milestone than talking about these shows going on versus it being in a time when we don't have anything to talk about.
Hell yeah. So we're going to start with that right off the bat. 100 episodes. I know, Ben, you're one of the people that were like on my case about this. I think it started in 2019 at Star Wars Celebration. It was a weird time, right? I was getting messages on Twitter from multiple people like, hey, are you at the convention? I was like, maybe he's one of those people. I don't know. It's like, wait, who am I juggling this conversation with? Do I know you in real life? I don't know what's going on. But and eventually after the convention, when things settled down, it was like, oh yeah, podcast. Let's do a podcast. And at the time, I obviously was in the middle of this YouTube channel. It's been around since 2015. And I just said, I'm too busy. And here I am listening to Star Wars podcasts all the time, vaguely curious. I've been guests on podcasts a few times before the celebration in Chicago 2019 when we started talking about this. And then I think it was a whole nother almost year before I decided to say, all right, let's try this darn thing. And it's been good ever since. We've had many guests, which has been really fun. Like last week, Milton, we had Becca from Tarkin's Top Shelf on there. So we had so many great guests throughout this time here, which has always been fun. We've had a lot of great discussion topics, a lot of fun tangents, as you could always expect here at Outer Rim Transmission when it comes to certain topics that come up from time to time. We've done commentaries here, so we've had a lot of fun, and there's no signs of stopping. That's for sure. So yeah, I'll throw it over to Milton, man. Do you have some memories that you really want to point out, or anything specific that this podcast has done for you personally? Okay, so it looks like we're having a little bit of technical difficulties with Milton tonight. I'm gonna throw this over to Ben.
Yeah. So for me, like you mentioned, Chris, you started out, doing like this little interview series and stuff, on here on your channel. And then, you had me on like as one of the like earlier guests. And then, as you can attest to our viewers and listeners, I was one of the people like harassing you constantly, like saying, come on, you got to start a podcast. Like I was like hardcore pushing Chris, like, hey, you gotta do a podcast, man. So, it was great seeing you like take that plunge. And then of course, you know, going back to our first episode on the podcast of yours and mine when you interviewed me, you know, we talked for like 2.5 hours on air or on the podcast about, you know, the classic Gendy Tartakovsky Clone Wars series. And that, of course, was a blast. And then we sat for another hour and a half after we finished our podcast. We sat for another hour and a half talking more Star Wars. We were on that call for like 4 hours total that night, which was just...
Holy crap.
Yeah, because that was back when I was dating my ex at the time. Because I remember she like, you know, we finished the podcast and she texted me and was like, "Are you ever coming out of your room? Because I'm sitting out here in the living room by myself and you're still sitting there talking to that guy about Star Wars on Skype." And I was like, whoops. But, you know, the good Star Wars chemistry there.
Yeah, that's the thing. Hey, Milton, I think we got you back.
All right. Is that better?
There we go. Oh yeah, much better. There's like
Much
a severe delay, and you're coming in, coming out. Like it's very odd, but I think we got it.
Okay. So sorry about that, people. You know, we're live, so you know it's real. Yeah, but no. Yeah, I remember, Ben, you doing your interview episode with Chris, because that's how I got started. I mean, I know I was on YouTube for a short period of time, and then that's how I met Chris originally, and then I met with him via YouTube on his page to do like an hour and a half long Star Wars podcast. Kind of, he was still getting in his groove of figuring out what he wanted to do. But no, it's crazy how 100 episodes is here for us.
Mm-hmm.
We're still kicking forward. I mean, I don't know how many years this is going to last. Obviously, I'm not thinking that far, but with what we've discussed over the past, I guess it's been almost a year, 2 years?
Yeah.
Has it been 2 years?
Yeah, I could go back and look for sure.
Yeah, something like that. Like, I mean, I know there's been breaks to the holidays and whatnot, but we've had a lot of good discussions about Star Wars and where it currently is, where it was, where we see it going in the future, our likes or dislikes. So that's what's nice about having any discussion about Star Wars, anything that you like in general with a group of guys that you have that common ground with. You can have discussions, whether it's good, bad, or indifferent, but you can still, at the end of the day, still walk away from it and say, hey, you know what, that was a good discussion. It was nice to, expand conversation. So yeah, it's always good to be a part of something this special, because not a lot of people have the opportunity, know-how, or even courage to start something like a podcast or a blog or anything to that nature. So yeah, like that's what I take away from this, and looking forward to do this conversation, whether it's weekly or every other week or whatever, we get this opportunity. It's always good, just because, we have the opportunity more than now to ever express ourselves. I mean, people weren't doing podcasts 20 years ago.
Nope.
So, I mean, when you wanted your Star Wars blog or your Star Wars, dirt, you had to go into on the internet when it was, dial up. It was slow. Yeah, we couldn't find that information. You had to wait until the magazines come out. Now people can break stories off of Twitter or Instagram like that. So it's nice to have that instant reaction, but also that instant availability to Star Wars and to the fandom. So yeah, that's what I take away from doing this podcast, and just being a Star Wars fan in general.
Heck yeah! So to be specific, March or May 23rd, 2021. So we're actually coming up on the 2-year anniversary of the podcast. That'll be a whole celebration in its own right there. But no, I like what you said. I like what you said there, Milton. Just the fact that there's an outlet. Not a lot of people have opportunities to have like-minded people to just speak to on a regular basis about very nitty-gritty things like this. It's important for people to express themselves, and what I like is having a podcast, getting different types of people on here, right? Whether it be from different backgrounds, different ages, different ethnicities, everything else. Like it's cool because everybody has a voice, and it's nice that I can give people a platform to hang out and just have fun and talk about their favorite, sci-fi space fantasy there. So, giving people enjoyment like that. And yeah, it's funny because, we've been doing this for so long, and it's crazy because none of us have actually met in person. One of these days, we're going to make it work. There better be a celebration in New York, and then there's no excuse for us to at least meet one day. Or Philly, right? Philly is a good one. So we're still trying to make those plans happen at some point in the future. But it just shows you that, thankfully we have the internet, we have the technology where it is, where we can feel like we're a part of the same room, even though we're far apart.
Oh yeah, I mean I think that's one of the most enjoyable experiences for me with this podcast, is becoming friends with you two guys, and then all of our viewers that we have, or listeners that we have, or people that we have like interactions with, because we're all like-minded Star Wars fans, or I'm always sending you guys stuff, or you guys are sending me stuff like in our group chat. It's always such a good part of the day. Look, we're talking about every day, it seems like, whether it be just about random Star Wars stuff or superhero stuff. And then for me personally, one thing that actually getting out there and getting on this podcast helped me about, so I was always kind of a person who was kind of, I guess, shy about getting out there this, talking on the internet and all this sort of thing. And and this podcast basically changed that, just because 100 episodes in, our listeners know I'm not scared to hold my opinion back now. But yeah, this definitely got me out of being more shy, and not voicing my opinion, or not doing a YouTube thing. This is just getting me out there. Heck, personally with me, it helped me in the last couple of years of getting and posting on Instagram all my workouts and stuff. I would have never, you asked me 5 years ago to post my workouts on Instagram, I'd have been yeah, right. So, just little things like that personally, it's been beneficial for me as well.
Oh, heck yeah. And I, of course, I can't say this enough without, the reason, I would do this if nobody else would probably listen. But the fact that we have a little small, tight-knit community of people out there, like Matt, like Aaron, like your brother there, Milton, like your buddy Alex, Ben, we got so many cool people that chime in all the time on this channel that just make the discussion what it is. And it's one thing to just be the two of us talking, but it's another thing to have other people sharing in that conversation, which we really, really dig. So yeah, thanks to the 100 guys, and here's to another 100 more podcasts as we get close to the 2-year anniversary of us actually doing this thing together. So yeah, I was thinking about doing something for 100 episodes, but with the celebration stuff coming up so quick and busy with all this stuff, I didn't really have time to play anything more specifically. But I figured, hey, we just opened up the podcast today, just giving our thoughts about all that. Yeah.
Just to jump in there real quick. What better way? We don't have to do anything special or anything for the 100th episode. The most important thing is just doing what we normally do, our normal good thing, reviewing Star Wars, and we have plenty of Star Wars to review this week.
Heck yeah. So we're going to get into that. But before we do, as I said, I shouted off the chat. We have Aaron, we have Dark Nerdy Gonzo join us in the chat. And that could be you too. If you're listening after the fact, you could join us every Friday night at 9 o'clock Eastern time here on the YouTube channel Starrapter. You could always download us after the fact on any podcast streaming network of your choice. Just go ahead and search outerrimtransmission, and if there is a feedback place you can leave feedback, go ahead and give us a rating for that as well. Some good housekeeping here. First of all, if you're going to be in the London area for a little celebration that has to do with Star Wars in the next 3 weeks, go ahead, and we're going to have a really cool panel for you guys. Me, Dominic Jones. We're going to have Ethan Sachs, writer of Bounty Hunters. We're going to have Adam Christopher, writer of Shadow of the Sith. We're going to have Kieran Duggan, also from the Star Wars Underworld Podcast Network, as well as Matt from Fantha Tracks. All 6 of us are going to be doing a panel about the smugglers, the gangsters, the bounty hunters of the Star Wars galaxy. Go ahead and check out the fan stage at 6 p.m. on Saturday, April 8th for a really cool, fun, nitty-gritty topic about our favorites of the Star Wars underworld. So yeah, we'll be doing that and just doing some, we don't have anything else planned as far as official things, but if you see me anywhere, you hear my voice, because apparently that's what happened in New York Comic Con, somebody just knew my voice, don't be afraid to say hi, and I might have some cool stickers or pins or something to give you as well. As far as things that came out this week, we have a couple releases. We have Yoda issue number 5, as well as the High Republic Adventures Volume 2. This is going to be issue number 3. So we have video review for both of those comics on the channel right now, so make sure you go ahead and check those out. So real quick stories this week before we jump into our reviews. We did get an announcement of a Star Wars Celebration exclusive comic book variant edition of Star Wars Hyperspace Stories Annual number 1. It's going to feature Jackson, which is perfectly timed for Easter weekend, which is when Celebration is happening. So it's kind of funny. We got the green bunny from Star Wars to celebrate Easter. So you get a cool comic. I'm not sure how to get it. I guess you just line up. We also have the official Star Wars Celebration badge artwork, and this is a far cry from last year. I don't know if there's anybody last year that really enjoyed the artwork last year. It was very strange artwork. I don't know if you guys remember seeing it for the badges. It was it was all environmental, like planets, but it was like very dark. Like the imagery was like super dark. You couldn't really make out certain things. So at least for the ones we have here, we have Bo-Katan, we have Ahsoka Tano, we have the Anakin Darth Vader from Obi-Wan with his mask slashed open. Looks sick as all heck. We have a Fennec Shand, we have Grief Karga, we have the third sister, right? The third sister, I forget her name sometimes. Reva, right? She's third sister?
Yeah. Yeah. I think.
I'm pretty sure.
Okay.
Yeah, that sounds right.
Cool. I can't lose any of my Star Wars street cred here screwing up some of these names. Okay, so we have Rey, we have Luke Skywalker with his ignited green blade, we have Grogu and Mando in the same frame, which I believe is the 4-day pass. We have Grogu on his own, we have Han Solo, we have Yoda, we have Leia, we have Obi-Wan in their Ceresu famous pointing stance from the Obi-Wan show, we have Diego Luna's Andor, we have Finn, we have R2 and C-3PO on the same one, we have a Chopper badge, we have an Omega badge. So yeah, big improvement over last year. Some really cool vibrant artwork. So I know sometimes they do sell like the badges like after the convention for collectors if they just want to like have all the badge artwork, because it really looks beautiful. Awesome stuff. You can check that out at starwars.com. So we're gonna just jump right into it for the Bad Batch season 2 episode 13. We're getting down to the wire, guys. We're getting down to the wire. This one is called Pabu. So this is the episode where the Bad Batch takes a sidestep from the galactic struggles, has a job with their friend. What is her name? Why am I thinking? Fee, and they decide, we're not working for Sid anymore, and we're going to take this job with this treasure hunter. So she takes them to the place where she's depositing all the treasure, and it's really an idyllic, looks like the Greek kind of oceanic type of vibe, the tropical kind of vibe, where they just hang out until a tsunami hits, and they have to quickly adjust, and in doing so, they become closer as a unit. Omega finally finds a little bit of ways to relax as a kid should at their age. And, well, the Bad Batch decide, hey, we're going to stay here and hang out for a while. So we really get the episode that gives them a sort of glimpse into what Endgame could look like if they were, in fact, done with fighting. So, Milton, I know you said that this and the Mandalorian episodes were incredible. So I want to hear your first impressions for the Bad Batch, man.
Unnecessary.
It totally fooled me.
A waste. Like and look, last week's episodes was that's the one with Crosshair, right?
Yep.
Yeah, and I didn't talk about, and I like that episode. I don't maybe I said something, I don't know if I said anything in the group chat, but I liked that episode last week. It worked. It was pushing along some narrative of the Empire and all that type of stuff, blah, 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 blah. And then we went to this. Literally, the first 2 minutes of that episode, I said, if this is a stupid Sid mission, I'm done. And I was like, okay, because after looking at the whole episode, it wasn't a Sid mission. They referenced her, obviously.
Yeah.
Only thing I liked about this episode was that 2 things. One, you're starting to see the Bad Batch distance themselves from Sid.
Yeah.
And 2, there's going to be repercussions for that later. So I'm like, okay, I hope they play that out, which I doubt they will. But maybe they will. But the rest of this episode, this could have been, honestly, maybe the epilogue of the Bad Batch series.
Mm.
And I'm thinking, like, because I'm like, what is this pushing? Like we know they want to get away. We know they want to have freedom and, independence from Sid and just get away from the BS. This was a waste in this middle of the season where there's only 4 episodes left. Because is it 4 or 3?
4. Right. Wait,
4.
3 now.
Because the last 2 episodes are back to back. Like, they're going to be playing together.
Yeah.
So I think technically they have
2
3
more
episodes left. Or 2 more weeks, right?
Yep.
So it's like, this would have been a perfect time to set up those next 3 episodes. Nada. Nothing. Okay. So what was the point of this? This could have been the epilogue to the series if they decided to end the series. Or at least end the season.
All right. Good spicy thoughts there, Milton. But not too spicy. I think a lot of people on the internet would agree. Ben, what about you?
Yeah, I can agree with pretty much a lot of your points, Milton. And I think another issue okay, all right. So like the episode, it wasn't trash, but like you said, it was unnecessary more than anything. Yeah. And to me, it was misplaced. Like you said, it could easily. When I watched it, with this being this like tropical environment and stuff, I envisioned this being the season finale. I honestly did. Just because it had the season finale type of vibes to it, like, ooh, things are wrapped up, let's do this baby mission and chill, So I kind of had those vibes to it. And then some of the stuff for me, really, it just kind of like back and forth, like, are we gonna have, like, I know I'm like a broken record harping on Omega's character arc, but are we gonna like have her actually like embrace going toward being like a late teen type character, like getting involved in the galaxy, or are we gonna go to like this and we're going back to like the kid side of thing with her? So it's like, I feel like it's all over the, like, they literally, for like Omega's character development, they just look at a dartboard and say, let's just scatter darts everywhere because we don't know where we're going with her. So to me, it's kind of just like, what's going on here, people? Like, ooh. I like this character a lot. I want to see her pushed forward because I feel like her character has a lot of good potential because of the background of her being the clone of Django and Boba's sister. So like, that's pretty dang cool. And then, so yeah, like, I thought the episode was what it was as a whole. I do like that they had, as you mentioned, Milton, like some of the, like, separation from Sid obviously is important because now that'll just push us away from that character, and that'll push us away from that character for like a season 3 potentially as well, because they're not going to go back to her. Yeah. So like, there's,
make the point, and I agree with you. Like, I don't think people will be like, man, how is it unnecessary but not trash? It wasn't trash. That's the thing, because like, I understood what they were trying to do.
Yeah.
It just was unnecessary to put it here.
Now, I do like, though, at the beginning, when that slug thing, that was Zam Wessel's type. That was the same type of creature that Zam Wessel was using.
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
Just to throw that out there.
Yep. Yeah, that was cool. And actually, one of those aliens, the aliens were voiced by Steve Blum, who did Zeb. So I caught that in the credits. Cool. I always like looking at the credits because you'll never like not be surprised by some characters that you're like, wait, that person did the voice? Like, oh wait, the guy from the Ghostbusters did that voice? Ever since that happened, I've been looking at the credits every week just to see, because it gets some fun names. Oh man, this is gonna be a fun discussion. I can see it already because I could disagree more with you guys. Oh man! All right, so let's knock out the whole discussion of why does this have to take place here? Now, I think in hindsight, we're going to see this play out better for why this was put here. But I think it's going to show us this is that episode that's building things. Like the next 3 episodes are going to hit the ground and we're going to get some really big stuff happen, some dark stuff probably that's going to happen. This is that levity in the story right now where it's like, oh, everybody's safe in this idealistic place. They saved each other from this big natural disaster, but they're going to hang out here. No, like this is how things are going to happen. Like the reason why they're doing nothing is they're trying to do like isolationism, essentially, where it's like, okay, we're not going to do anything, but then the trouble's going to find them and then they're going to endanger all these people there because they're the ones there and whatever. So I think what this episode's purpose was is like building up that safeness in us as the viewer. And then it's like, oh yeah, you thought they were safe and everything. And then the next episode or 2, there's probably going to be some losses happening. So in order for that to really strike at home, that's why we're getting things like this right now. At least that's why I justify
well, that makes sense. Like that makes sense, and I understand that, and that's why I can see this playing in the finale or whatever it is.
Mm-hmm.
But again, it's like I rather them over explain it because I'm thinking like, all right, this just out of nowhere compared to last week. That's why I get mad at the show. It's like you go from a great episode like that, to this. It's like it's such unbalanced. Like transition. Their transitions aren't good for this show, but this season. Last year it was wonky, but we knew at the end of the day where they were going to get to for the most part, where they were taking it. This we have no idea.
And here's the thing: you gotta give them. I gotta give them leeway. We talked about that there's going to be a Bad Batch panel at Celebration, a headlining panel. They're getting a season 3. I think at this point it's a lock. Yep. I don't think that in any universe they're going to try to cram in the ending of the story in 3 episodes with the way it's going. So for that, I can let a little bit off of them at this point because it's like, okay, it's pretty much a given that they're going to announce, and they'll probably show us a trailer too. I bet you season 3 is already in the can because this one took out like a year to get here, so that next story is probably done. So this season at least is going to be the one that was really building the characters up, building the characters up, and then next season will be like the explosive finale. I really can't see this going past season 3, but as far as like this, Omega, I liked what happened here because, you know, she met the Wookiee, they were in danger. She met the other kid and was still like the Empire's controlling. This is like the first planet where she met a kid. They weren't in danger. They weren't on a mission. And this is how she should be as a kid. So I liked seeing that from her. The music was beautiful. The music was awesome. And just the way the artwork, everything. Oh my gosh, the way they did the physics of the waves. As somebody who surfs, I haven't seen waves look that good in anything animated ever. Like from a CGI perspective. Like that looked like incredible. It looked like lifelike that when they were on the boat. And it was just going. I was like, what in the world?
I mean, listen, this show has never failed when it comes to the way it looks and the way it sounds and, you know, how they produced the show in that nature. It's just, I think we've all struggled with inconsistency of story and you know, and development of that. I think this was a great episode for character development for all of them. I will say that's probably the positive thing about this episode is character development because of Tech and Hunter and oh my gosh, the big guy,
Wrecker,
yeah, like just seeing that, hey, like their end game is to find peace, is to get away from all war and everything, and relax, and they want the best road, and even like in that whoever Wanda Sykes' character for whatever her name is, like she points it out, she's like, look. Like this girl needs like stability. She needs like to be a child. She needs to learn something else, and that makes sense to me because we've all said. I think Ben, you brought up a couple times, like you know, this girl like she thinks like an adult in a lot of ways because she has to. But it's like when are they going to challenge that thinking for her?
It's like it's all over the board. That's the only thing. Like I said before, you know, I know like what they're trying to do with Omega's character, obviously because of it being an animated show and stuff. So they want a character like related to like a younger audience that's watching and whatnot. But my thing is, I just want a consistency with, like, I know this is a lot to ask from an animated show, but like, I want. All right, guys. So like, if you get where I'm coming from, like, I'd prefer a consistency. Like, if we're gonna have Omega be like the kid of the group, just have her consistently stay the kid of the group through the course, versus like having some weeks where it's like she's right on par with the other Bad Batch crew, and then other weeks she's like back down here, like, really young again. So it's like it's like it's so rocky. That's my only issue with Omega's characters. I prefer either you slowly progressing her toward the more like mature, like up middle upper teens range, or just have a consistent through arc of her just being like the young kid. That's my only issue with her overall arc, is I just feel like it's rocky, I think.
Yeah, I mean, I will say there definitely are some stumbles in there. I think overall, when you look at the overall picture, good. There's some chaff you could have cut out of there for sure. But there's less cameos, at least this time around. So they are trying to really build her story. I want to talk about something we haven't really seen a lot of in Star Wars, and that is a natural disaster. I feel like they really, the team behind Bad Batch really just pulled out all stops on this. I thought it was fantastic to see, like, the population dealing with it and the amount of tension that they were able to build. They were able to build that tension through the episode with the sirens and everything like that. Like, get to the high ground. Like, that was awesome. So I liked seeing them kind of go beyond, break out the box a little bit, and all that.
No, I thought it looked good. I mean, first of all, I ain't gonna lie. Like, I would live there. Now, I wouldn't go on like the lower part of the island because I'm trying to get shit wrecked. But like, I thought they did a good job at portraying that natural disaster as they should. Because again, I mean, that happens in the real world. I mean, I don't know if there's any islands or communities built like that on islands in our universe, but we know about natural disasters of hurricanes and tsunamis and that type. So that makes total sense, and I thought they did a really good job at portraying that. It visually looked great, and you can clearly see that, like, it devastated that community. So I'm curious to see if they're going to bounce back. I mean, obviously, we know the Bad Batch will be there for a minute, so hopefully we see some progression of what that looks like in their rebuild. But then again, I think we all can agree that this remote community won't be remote much longer, because we feel like something's going to happen where they will get exposed, and natural disasters won't be this community's only concern moving forward.
Oh yeah, I completely agree with both of you. That's one thing that came to mind really when I was watching this episode. I was like, dang. Now that I think about it, in all of Star Wars, for the most part, like in current canon, from like even just on screen anyways, and then even in Legends, like, I can't remember a lot of natural disasters in Star Wars really, so it was a really, really cool integration. And I'm like, man, maybe we could include some more something like natural disasters to a degree, like, I don't know, like, just because, like, with Star Wars, we always just assume like all these characters are just like, like god tier, and they can just like get away from all this danger and stuff. But a natural disaster is something like bigger than these, literally physically bigger than these characters. So like, it's cool that we're actually getting to see something like this. I mean, I feel like the only time we've really seen anything close to a natural disaster is like when the Bendu was doing his whole thing with like Thrawn and all that stuff. That was all like, it was just craziness. But that's about it, from my knowledge.
I mean, yeah, we kind of saw one last week with the Crosshair, but that was explosive. So I mean, that's and we've seen like rainstorms, electrical. So I think there's electrical storms like in Star Wars at one point. So, and like obviously the sandstorms at Tatooine and whatnot. So we've seen that small stuff, but nothing like this.
And nothing like portrayed in this way. I mean, like destroying stuff and like,
absolutely.
Like really being like a centerpiece of the plot.
And maybe the that creature that they captured recently,
Zilla
Oh my,
Beast.
yeah, the original Zillow Beast was, I guess, quote unquote, a natural disaster.
Yeah.
So like, yeah, maybe it was the first time we saw it.
Mm-hmm. So we got a whole nother episode to review. So I think we're gonna go ahead, give our scores out of 10. Just some last thoughts. I'll start off tonight. So yeah, I really enjoyed this episode. This is fantastic. I don't think Bad Batch has really missed for me personally in the last couple episodes. I really feel like once they came back from that halfway marker, they have been driving at least a weekly basis of building a story rather than having just a bunch of interlude standalone episodes like they did in the first half. So yeah, between a natural disaster, between representation, I like that they had a rounder person in Star Wars. Like that's pretty cool, like especially for a human. Like we don't really see that, so got to give props some people representation whatever out there. That's pretty neat. Music, everything was fantastic. Seeing Omega actually like interact with somebody like her in a non-threatening situation at the beginning at least was pretty neat. So I'm giving this one an 8.5 out of 10. Ben?
Yeah, I mean, for me, like I mentioned, I think the episode was beautifully shot. Like you mentioned earlier, Chris, like the way the water, the way that just everything was shot in this episode, I think it looked great. It was a nice episode for character development. I do think though, the more I think about it, I think this is going to be kind of like a pseudo part 1-esque, like they're going to kind of continue the story, obviously next week. And then this will be kind of like our 2-part palate cleanser before the finale. So, with that kind of in mind, I had my issues with it, but it's more of like issues as a whole with the series. So I can't like harp too much on Omega because that's overall a series issue. So for me, I just think it was a solid, fine episode. It wasn't trash. Trust me, we've had trash episodes, and this was not trash. So for me, I would have to give this a 7 out of 10.
7 out of 10. Finally, Milton, what were your thoughts on this incredible episode of Star Wars television?
Yeah, again, I will be very clear to say it wasn't trash. And people might say, Milton, but you said it was unnecessary. You're right, unnecessary. However, I understand. When I watch these episodes, I do understand what they're trying to do a lot of the times. It's just, to me, it felt misplaced. It felt that it could have been pushed later in the show, depending on where you want to put it. And if you wanted to end the show, or at least tell a story of how the ending's going to progress. I like the character development because that was clear in this episode. I like the visuals, I like the music, I like the portrayal of the natural disaster. It's a beautiful shot episode. So, and would I rewatch this episode in the future if I had to? I mean, maybe, probably not, but it ain't Dookie. So, I mean, I would say this episode's probably a 6.5 for me.
Okay. That's fair. Kind of like a middle of the road sort of episode. Yeah. It still had its purpose, but maybe it was a little bit. Yeah.
Well, will play out later.
Well, you bring up a really good point, though. I mean, obviously, I know we're closing the Bad Batch review here, but I think this episode, to kind of like judge episodes of a show, like my view on a lot of these things, it doesn't matter if it's Star Wars or whatever. Like if this episode would just casually play on your Disney Plus in the background, like you wouldn't automatically skip it. Like if it was playing, you could just let it play and it wouldn't be terrible. So like I feel like it's fine enough. Like it's just solid.
There you go. So getting into another episode discussion, we have the Mandalorian to talk about. I mean, it's just not enough that we have Bad Batch, but we have to have the flagship Star Wars series to talk about in the same week. It's craziness. So we have the Mandalorian Season 3, Episode 3, Chapter 19, The Convert to talk about. In this episode, we have the Mandalorian and, surprisingly, Bo-Katan both getting redeemed, but also dealing with a sudden attack by the Imperial Remnant. Meanwhile, we have on Coruscant. We return to Coruscant after the events of Return of the Jedi to follow Dr. Persing and how he assimilates into life in the New Republic. Of course, he was part of the Imperials and trying to get Grogu's blood and is a cloner and all that. So I will open up. I love this episode. I feel like I'm going to be in the minority for this. But I really enjoyed that. Yes, it was an uneven episode. Did it feel like jerked you around going from that big ending with Mando in the beginning to the Coruscant stuff? Sure. Could it have been been transitioned better? Maybe, yeah, perhaps. But the content itself, I both like from both perspectives of seeing the amazing TIE Interceptor battle with the N1 Starfighter, with the Gauntlet Mandalorian fighter, then going to Coruscant and dealing with stuff like we've seen in a lot of the books, like Aftermath deals with it a little bit. Definitely the Alphabet Squadron by Alexander Freed heavily deals with what happens to the Imperials after they defect to the New Republic and how are their living conditions, all of that. We get to go into this character of Talia, I forget, Elia or Elia Kane or something like, yeah, Elia Kane, this really interesting character that before was only named as a communication officer in the credits, taking a front seat in the story here. And just, it felt like an Andor episode. Of course, a lot of people are saying that, but I literally said that before anybody else did in my own mind. I was like, I finished the episode, I was like, that felt a lot like Andor, and you guys know I like Andor, so I was going to be a fan of this from the get-go, but it was cool to see the Mandalorian slow down a little bit and do a lot of great world building. At least I thought it was good world building, in my opinion. I'm going to throw this one to you first, Ben. What were your first initial impressions on this?
So for me, I actually watched this episode 3 times in the last few days, just to figure out exactly how I feel about it. Just because, when I first watched it, this is, like I mentioned with Andor, it's kind of like the 3 a.m. judging it. So, like, when I was watching it at 3 a.m., I was like, okay, what are we doing here? This is like 40 minutes of just, like, character development, blah, 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 blah. Like, for me, like, the beginning and end of the episode were fantastic. All the stuff with Mando and Bo were fantastic. And then, we had the stuff in the middle with Dr. Pershing. Like I said, I watched this 3 times just to kind of like make sure to get a gauge. Like I watched it again Wednesday night, and then I watched it this morning when I was doing cardio, because I just did like an hour session of cardio and watched it. And I think, like, for me, I just wish I get where they were going with this. Like, I understand, like, I feel like they saw Andor or heard. Obviously, this was in production, shortly after, around the time of Andor, probably. So, they probably took some inspiration from it, I'm sure. And with the pacing of the episode and everything. So for me, like, I get what they tried to do. I think the middle stuff was solid with Pershing. I don't think it was terrible. Don't think it was amazing. I think it was solid to good. And to me, like, that was kind of like my thinking of it. And I just think with all the stuff with Pershing, there's a lot of good character development, like you said. There's good Easter eggs. We'll get into those. There's obviously the overarching thing, to me anyways, my interpretation of it is the Empire's still around. That's basically what I got out of this episode, was the Empire still around, obviously, from the beginning, and then the Imperial officer mind flaring Dr. Pershing at the end. So, like, you have those things. I think they were very good aspects of that portion of the episode. But yeah, like, I think it was solid. And yeah, I was another person too. I instantly thought, man, this feels like Andor. Like, I kid you not, Chris, like at 3 a.m. when I'm watching this, I literally said to myself, well, I know for sure Chris is going to at least like this episode a lot, because it feels so much like Andor. I knew you were going to like it. And to me, here's my kind of bird's eye view of this episode, if you will. To me, this was the best episode of Andor we've had, because it had some good Star Wars stuff in it that I like, and it had the Andor vibes. Like this, like that. If I could get that from Andor, I would be set. I'll just say that.
Fair enough. Good opening salvo there, Ben. What about you, Milton?
Yeah. What was this? This could have been. I'll say it this way. The beginning and end was great. Loved it. And the middle of the episode was good for what it was, great actually for what it was. But I didn't like this episode, and this is why. Because these are 2 different episodes stuffed in one.
I agree with that. Like I said off the top, I was like, yeah, transition wise and all, and I'm gonna get into why I think
I
that
wish
is.
they would have chopped in and out, back and forth for the story.
Okay.
That's my thing.
Well, here's the thing though. How does now I understand the redemption of this episode. Redemption was this episode, I think. Pershing talked about, wanting to make a change, blah blah blah, and obviously dipping, himself in the waters of the Mandalore, redemption, whatever. That's the overall theme of this episode. I think we all can agree on that. But one had nothing to do with the other in this episode. It really didn't, because again, like we're going from a dogfight in the first, or excuse me, we're going from him being rescued from in the waters. Dogfight, with the TIE interceptors, which was dope, by the way.
That was sick.
Oh yeah,
I legit said this, and I watch this. So I usually do watch this in the morning when I'm eating breakfast before I go to work. I said, man, this is a TV, it's a streaming budget.
Yeah.
It does not look like it at all.
Nope.
And this is why I get mad at Obi-Wan. It's like, where this should have been going to Obi-Wan.
yeah.
That's another podcast. But dogfight was great. Beginning was great. Ending was great with the armor and those Mandalorians, all that, and him being purified and all that type of thing. It's like we went from two extremes to this middle, which again, it was a good story. I want people to know it was good.
Yeah.
I liked it. It was just not needed for this particular episode. You could have broke this up. If they would have just gave us all like the rest of the Mando ending and to here, like, and told us that story, say, hey, they got back to the armor, they're going to finish that. And they could have drug it out for like 30 minutes. Fine. And then tell this episode next week.
Yeah.
I'd be like, yep, we got 2 great episodes back to back to back, or at least 2 good episodes back to back.
Yeah. So it seems go ahead, Ben.
There was no transition. It was just like, up, fly off to hyperspace. Now we're at the Coruscant.
I think that was my.
I thought they were going to go to Coruscant. That's what I'm thinking. Oh, they're going to go to. I was like, let's go. And I'm thinking, they're going to meet with Pershing. I was thinking, oh my God, they're going to bring him into the fold. How?
Yeah.
Nope.
Well, we'll see. My thing with the whole episode, hearing both of you talk more about it, I think the number one issue with the episode for me, and for a lot of people, really. I mean, I saw some other reviewers use the word jarring for the middle portion, and that's exactly what it was. Because and I'm not saying that jarring isn't it's a car crash or something. It's not terrible. It's like Milton said, it's a good story. They did the story well. It was if you isolate it, cut off the Mando ends, it's a good episode. But it's just jarring for pacing wise, because with Mando we're used to more upbeat, just the normal upbeat Mando stuff. We got the beginning and the end, and I think if you go from that pacing to this, I think the way you have to do it, in my opinion, is you need to cut back and forth between Mando to Coruscant, Mando to Coruscant, Mando to Coruscant, back to Mando at the end, just to break up the pacing of the episode. Because there were moments in the episode I felt that were getting kind of draggy, him continually going back to the the robot to examine him, those type of things. It felt like they were dragging out, and I feel like this episode for me, I think, would have been a lot higher, and I think for a lot of people, if you just cut it up a little. All you have to do is intersperse some of the Mando Bo-Katan stuff, and I think this episode would have hit really, really well across the Star Wars community.
Yeah, I mean, I think if you cut it up, you have to add a little more substance to those transitions, which I'm sure they could have figured that out. It just, to me, it seemed odd that you went from one extreme to the other, with no tie. And again, this maybe it could tie in. I don't know.
I do think this is a long play, though. think this is a long play.
Yeah,
and I know tonight. I think tonight, people probably think, man, Milton's a crazy person because he just sounds like he's all over the place and he's inconsistent. It's not that. It's just that it's like we legit went from one extreme to the other. The transitions wasn't great, And again, Pershing's story, I'm curious to see what they're going to do with him now, because he plays a significant role in this whole cloning thing. We know the end game of the cloning and what they want to do. And we all know it's all about Palpatine and him coming back. But she sabotaged that machine. What's going to happen to him now? What's going to happen to her? Who's she going to bring into the fold now to figure out this cloning thing? Because I feel like he's the only one that can really do it from how they're portraying it, right? From the first, was it second season or whatever it was?
Mm-hmm.
Obviously, like Gideon's going to be in this season, so I'm curious like what they're going to do with him with this cloning thing. So I don't know. It to me is like, okay, I could be wrong. These next couple weeks could be like, all right, Milton, this is why they did it a certain way. This is what they were trying to say. And I'll be the first one to say, I was wrong. This was great. I should have kept my mouth shut about being assuming.
Yeah.
However, I don't know anything yet. So
it's hard because it's hard because we're I think a lot of us are still like, the Star Wars series has been around for a long time. Now it's been since 2019, this live action stuff. I think a lot of us still have a mindset of like, oh, the whole story has to be told in this hour because that's what the movies were, and the movie would tell us everything in that one movie for 2.5 hours. We would get all the answers we need, and I think a lot of us are just like, okay, we're still maybe a little bit on that mindset because series we have to.
Right.
It takes a long game sometimes. Like I said before in the beginning, like hindsight, like we might look and be like, hey, this episode was greatly needed. Eventually, they're going to have to branch out. And I think this episode shows us more that this is Star Wars Return of the Jedi episode 6.5.
Right.
Like the Mandalorian is episode 6.5 in the saga. Because now Mandalorian was we're like looking through his eyes in this era. Now we're going to get those other characters. It's going to start to be like Game of Thrones probably. We're going to have these other character storylines that are just going to pop up, and we're not going to be looking at Mando all the time. And I think this episode showed us like the Mandalorian, this is literally the Mando verse now. I mean, we've seen that though already last season or the last series with Book of Boba Fett, how that could happen. So they already kind of trained us in that way where it's like, not every episode's going to always be about Din. And here we go again with another episode that still had Din in it, but most of the episode wasn't him. So hence they're building out, that's what like the world building, they're building out the universe. And going into that, the reason why this could have been a storyline that's like, why is this happening now? Going back to 2020, they announced the Rangers of the New Republic series, and we assumed that was going to be Cara Dune's Gina Carano, and it's no longer a part of Lucasfilm. I feel like some of that storyline is getting mashed into this season of Mandalorian because they have great stories to tell that were written, and they need to get that conclusion because that was going to tie into something. So I feel like Rangers of the New Republic is going to deal with Carson Teva. It was going to deal with Grief Karga maybe, and different things there. So I think that's part of that storyline is getting inserted into here. They're going to try their best to kind of make it sync together, but I don't know. I guess they could have synced it up better or something, but
Chris, I agree with that. See, here's the thing though, like that's why I felt that we could have gotten 2 separate episodes because I agree with you. This show, even though it's called Mandalorian, there will be an episode or 2 that doesn't focus on him, as that should, because you want to expand it. Mm-hmm. This is the MCU. Mm-hmm. These shows are interconnected because literally. They say, are you here to see Boba Fett? Whenever he came to Tatooine. So this is the MCU. Star Wars is an MCU now. So like, I understand that. So if they want to branch off and tell like a backdoor pilot of a show of Rangers of the Republic or whatever, they can. And also tied into Mando, it's just how they mesh these two together. These are 2 episodes they put together that I think was just clunky and just not necessary for how they did it. Again, I love the separate stories. Together, it just didn't fit, in my opinion. Because I understand what each element was being told and why they were pushing it. Again, I see the redemption arc in this episode. That makes sense to me. But other than that, though, it's like, it was clunky. Like we didn't need to go from Mando, Pershing, Mando again. It's like all right.
And I like the fact I paid attention to this at the end because Jon Favreau wasn't the only one writing this episode. And man, I like Jon Favreau a lot, but I feel like, and other people's have said their criticism, like maybe it's not a great idea to have the one guy writing everything. Sometimes you want to have another piece in the puzzle to kind of figure things out. And I could definitely see like when they did the Andor type of stuff in the episode, like, okay, that was maybe the other guy chiming in, like, okay, let's slow this down and do this. And I'm like, that's good. Because like we were falling into a trap like the last episode. Yeah, you weren't here, Milton, for it. But like, at least I felt like the episode was really repetitive sometimes. And it was just like, oh man, like, I don't know if like there could have been another editor that could have looked over the script or something, because it's like we literally repeated the same things over and over again. The first 20 minutes having a droid go out, then having a droid go all the way back out, then Bo-Katan literally retreading the same steps again to go back there. It's like, okay, what is the point of this? Like, we could have cut out some stuff here. So it was interesting. And apparently next week's episode is going to be co-written by Dave Filoni. So take with that what you will. I don't want to get out of this conversation, but I'm assuming that there's going to be some really big stuff, because whenever he's involved, it's like, okay, what Rebels character is going to show up next week? Not trying to alert the internet, but that has been known to happen before. But anyway, right. I liked how there was another writer that was on board. That's what I'm trying to say.
Yeah, look, Ahsoka could show up next week for all we know.
Yeah,
I mean, he loves Ahsoka. I mean, I don't see Ezra showing up. I know people were saying that, at one point. I don't see it, because they're going to keep that for Ahsoka. Let's just keep it 100. But she could pop up. Hondo could pop. We don't know. I mean, if he's, yeah. I mean, and other than that, though, like I said, I understand each story of each character, that of the two main focuses of this episode. I guess the four main focuses of this episode. It could have been two separate ones. It just could have been two separate ones, in my opinion.
Okay. Fair enough. Let's talk about at least the Mando stuff of the episode. What I will say is I'm very excited that they already dealt with. I'm excited with the pacing of this season, and I know they're stuck with the 8 episodes, and it seems like they're going at a very lightning pace. But I'm happy. It's kind of nice to like subvert the expectations a little bit. Just saying like, hey, this whole theme, every trailer was like, oh, I got to get redeemed. I got my helmet. I got to go to Mandalore. They have done Mandalore in 3 episodes already. We got 5 episodes left. That excites me beyond belief, because it's like, now we see the Empire, like the interceptors. Oh, a warlord cannot possibly contain this many squadrons of fighters. Who's really in charge? Like, that is what really excites me, because they kind of trick the audience, at least in the promotion, like, oh, you thought it was about this, you were totally wrong.
No, I listen, I totally agree with that, and I actually said it to myself, that I'm like, yeah, they got this over quick. Like, I love that, and as they should, because we all know Den's pretty efficient for the most part as a bounty hunter, and when he's focused, he gets stuff done. Mm-hmm. I'm glad that it only took us 3 episodes. Because if this would have lasted 8, to go get a little thing of water, damn well we'd have been saying something. I know I'd have been like, that's ridiculous. Because I can walk down the street into a creek and get some water and say, hey, I bathed in the waters of blankety blank. So now I know the water's, but it's like, come on. Like, I'm glad it got it done quick.
Well, I think for me, some of the best parts of like the Mando stuff for this episode, I think the best part, obviously you have the connections to the Empire. See, like, I think that's one of the biggest points. Of course, we mentioned like the redeeming, like the actual redemption parts of this episode. But I think for me, some of the best parts of the overall episode, it's just the fact that like the Empire is present. Like, you have the Imperial officer girl, you have her doing the stuff she did to Pershing, you have the TIE interceptors. My first thought was like, oh my gosh, are these coming from like Thrawn or something?
Yeah, same.
That was literally my instantly first thought. And as soon as Bo-Katan was like, no, a warlord couldn't contain all these TIE fighters and like, all this stuff. So like, all this stuff just has me thinking like the big picture stuff. And like you mentioned, Milton, the whole MCU thing, like this is literally, they're doing the whole MCU. We're going to like make little references here and there. I mean, heck, this week, like, Dave and John did an interview, and like Dave, they got asked about the whole connectivity thing.
Yeah.
And Dave was like teasing it, basically. He was like, well, you could or you couldn't. Like, basically saying, yeah, there's something coming with all these connections. So it's cool that like they're making these connections and things like that. But I think one of the best parts of the episode for me, it was cool just seeing like them doing the whole like pull the carpet out from under Bo-Katan's feet, tricking her basically to be, joining the Death Watch. Like, I thought that was such a cool little and see, like, to me, that's Star Wars comedy right there. That is like Star Wars comedy at its finest, because it's like, the armor was like, did you remove your helmet since you went in the water? And she's like, no. She's like, well, then, you're redeemed, blah, blah, blah. This is the way, like, so you're a part of the cult now. So, like, that's kind of like your little chuckle Star Wars comedy, like, oh, like Bo-Katan got tricked. Like, I thought that was a nice piece of the episode. And then, as I mentioned earlier, there were plenty of prequel Easter eggs on the Coruscant part. And that was really cool.
Yeah, so as far as the beginning of the episode, I thought it was pretty funny. They confirmed that Din Djarin just like foolishly like fell into the deep end of the pool, essentially. It's like, oh yeah, it wasn't no mythosaur that got him. He just fell down.
So Bo-Katan was the only one that saw it.
She was the only one that saw it, and that was the awakening in her. And that's where that character instantly gets more interesting for me, because it's like, oh, she has that epiphany of like, she didn't take that helmet off the rest of the time. Like, she was, whether she subconsciously just didn't do it or what, but it was like, oh yeah. And not seeing her face the whole episode, you could just see by her body language, like she's like visibly shooken from having this mythical experience. And it's so neat seeing how that character is being assimilated into that group. They're all at the end of the episode just like patting her on the shoulder, welcoming her as one of them, even though like she was a completely separate entity, that they were enemies. Like, they still welcome her in as family. Like, I thought that was really interesting from that culture perspective of just seeing all these different peoples just come together.
Well, I thought that was interesting too, because like the armor was laying into Din about Bo-Katan in like season 2.
Yeah.
And the armor was like literally slamming Bo-Katan for like talking about the downfall of Mandalore and everything, and now she's letting her join the group, which I mean, then again, with them being like the group that they are, that shows like how much they value like the honor and the code of this is the way, like that whole thing. Like, that shows you how much they actually value that like, even if Bo was their, sworn enemy, like they still let her join. Like, so that was pretty interesting to say the least. But also I think it's going to be interesting to see how Bo handles it, whether she sticks with it or not. Because I do think, one of my buddies joked around about this. He's like, it's kind of one of those things, like, if you're standing in a room of like extremists and stuff, and they're like, you're going to join us, right? And I don't think Bo-Katan was going to like whip her helmet off right there and say, no, I'm not joining you with all these people around. So like, I don't know. I think it's going to be interesting, because if she keeps her helmet on in the coming weeks, that'll be a very interesting turn on her character.
Oh yeah. Oh yeah. Let's get into Coruscant a little bit. I mean, just the visuals. Like, again, like you were talking about the TIE fighters mill, and I'm talking about Coruscant City. Like, what the heck, man? This looks just like it did out of Revenge of the Sith, or at the end of Return of the Jedi. Just incredible stuff. Seeing the Opera House from Revenge of the Sith repurposed as like this communal gathering place of these people speaking against their own past of the Imperials. Like, that was neat.
Look, I'm just keeping it short and sweet. Let's effing go.
Plagueis beats.
Listen, this is what we need in the sequel trilogy. You know what I'm saying? We should have got this in the movies. Like, I'm not going to rant about it because it'd be unnecessary, but I'm glad we got it in this show. I legit perked up. I was like, man, Coruscant, because I was surprised. Like, I'm sure you guys weren't seeing that coming. I was like, oh, Coruscant, like, oh snap, and it looked good. That's what I'm saying.
Yeah.
They don't look like a TV show. That's a movie.
It wasn't like they had 5 ships, the same 5 ships going around, and it was literally like what you see in the prequels, like the heavy traffic, all the different buildings were unique. Like, every freaking frame you could pause.
Andor in this show did Coruscant justice. Because anytime you saw Coruscant on Andor, it looked good. And it was shot during the day. We got a lot of day scenes in Andor. And at night, I'm thinking, oh, snap, when we got this in this show, I'm like, damn, it looks good. Like, this is the movie version. This ain't no TV budget.
Mm-hmm.
So glad we got it. It was gorgeous, man.
Heck yeah. We got to see a really cool Rogue One Catalyst Easter egg where they're at that festival. And by the way, I don't know if you guys caught this, but they played a different rendition of Rise of the Resistance
Yep.
in the actual music. I was like, yeah, that's awesome. But yeah, you see the mountain peak of, I think it's like Mount Umite or something like that, which was mentioned in Rogue One Catalyst novel where Galen Erso was doing his research on the Death Star with Orson Krennic, and then it was also mentioned in the High Republic books. So there was like a lot of cool deep cuts that were. I loved like the I forget what they call it, like something fizzy pop or something like that, with like those little popsicles things they were having. Like that was cool Star Wars food. Like
Here's an interesting thing about those that you bring that up. Okay, so when they were having those, did you guys notice it's cool little foreshadowing? I saw someone point this out on Twitter, so it's definitely not me coming up with this little Easter egg. Foreshadowing for the girl, the Imperial chick turning on him. So he had a blue one and she had a dark red one, if you didn't notice that.
Oh, that's cool.
Yeah, that's just a little Easter egg someone pointed out on Twitter, and they didn't do that on accident. Just he had a blue one, like he was like quote unquote good, and it was literally a dark red one she had. So it's like it's cool that they had like a little Easter egg like that, just thrown in there to like foreshadow. Like I love when shows and movies do that sort of thing, just like stuff when you look back on them where you're like, oh man, that's a cool little foreshadowing thing right there.
Yeah, and one thing that my buddy JT, a friend of mine, pointed out, we were talking earlier tonight about the episode. Now, I don't know if you guys picked up on this, but I watched the episode twice, and I definitely noticed it again on the second time. He does something with his ear, like he's like itching his ear, and they purposely pointed out like Pershing does, like multiple times. He does it when he's like giving his speech in the beginning. Then he might do it like 2 more times throughout the episode. Another time, like he was talking to the droid, the New Republic droid, about like admitting like, yes, I'm still abiding by the laws, and he's doing that there. And I think he might do it 1 more time. But I'm like, is this a tell to somebody? Like, what is happening here? Is this a code word? Like, what the heck? I don't know if you guys picked up on this.
I didn't see it.
Yeah, I picked up on that, and I started digging into it. Apparently, that was the ear that Cara Dune grazed that in one of the gunfights that happened.
What?
Yeah, that was the exact. Yeah, I saw someone post like a side-by-side clip of when Cara and them were doing whatever, like season 1, and like her blaster fire, it like grazes his ear. It's like that.
Wait, is that in season 2 when they're in the Lambda class shuttle?
Season 2. Oh yeah, or was it season 2? Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah. Yeah. That's when it is, because it was from yeah, but it was Cara Dune's blaster. That was the ear that got nicked by her blaster, actually.
Oh.
So
see?
just like I don't know.
Great detail. That's awesome detail. They put that in there.
Yeah, I saw that on Twitter, and I was like, man, that's a cool little like tiny detail. You have that, and then I texted you guys in our group chat. So the garden area that got referenced in this episode, it was so cool. You talk about deep cut for like John and Dave with Legends. That the garden thing that was referenced in this episode was a mission the Republic Commando Squad had to go on in the book Hard Contact, and it's like the second book, I think, of the trilogy. And that, because they had to go to a mission on Coruscant in that book, in the old Legends book, and they actually referenced that literal, like the name of that place. That was literally the exact place where they went for one of the missions in the Hard Contact book.
That's cool. I like the fact that they name drop Camino and it's tying into the prequels. Yep. He's discussing the DNA. What if we could get Din? And this is the stuff that's going to matter. Like, this is the stuff that is going to factor into Palpatine. I mean, just cloning Palpatine. It's like, what if we get these 2 different strands from these 2 different people and put them together? It's like, ooh, they got Grogu. Who else are they going to try to, incorporate into this clone version or whatever? I guess it could be Palpatine's original DNA mixed with Grogu or something like that to retain the Force stability of all that. But I thought that was cool. Just Pershing's journey. I like how they directed it. I like how it was shot. Just going through the day-to-day of just seeing. I love, ever since Andor, I love just like seeing like the bedrooms of characters. It's kind of odd to say, but it's just like the normalcy of Star Wars that we never got until the series, the live action series. Up until now, we never seen like something simple like Anakin going into his crew quarters on like the Star Destroyers or anything. Like we never seen stuff that was like down to earth, grounded in reality, like little things like that that were like they were pretty fun.
I mean, the only time we got that, I think, was Revenge of the Sith when Anakin has his dream.
Oh, true.
That's it. But like, he gets out of bed. Or in sleep, we see him sleeping in Attack of the Clones, having a nightmare. That's it.
What do you? So you guys enjoyed his journey through this episode? Pershing's, yeah, like what he was doing,
yeah. Oh yeah.
For what it was, I didn't mind it. Like, I was invested whenever it was on. Like that's the thing. Like it was an investing story. It had. I would have probably watched this episode eventually again. You know, when I would do a rewatch of the show. But I will probably still say this again. Like there was no need to put that in this episode. It could have been 2 separate episodes.
Yeah, I like this as a story of a guy that's getting in over his head, and part of me was like, is this guy like getting this research to try to rejoin the Empire? Or is he like actually being truthful? Like, no, I'm going to use this for good. I'm going to use this for the New Republic. Right. What was your guys' thoughts on this, Ben?
For me, I was thinking he was going to be one of those whole characters. You see it happen in so many movies and shows. I was expecting him to go from like good intentions to like be seduced by like the temptation basically. So I was thinking he was going to eventually get his equipment, and then the Imperial officer was going to talk to him. She was going to be like, "Hey, let's bust out of here," blah 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 blah, and he was going to think about it, and then eventually they would bust out or something. Like I was thinking he was going to eventually just fall back down that path, but so that's where I was kind of thinking he was going. But as the episode played out, I think he actually was just trying to actually be good, because he did talk about the whole someone losing their heart, I believe. And, you know, if we would have been able to clone the organs and stuff, it would have saved them, blah, blah, blah. Like, that whole spiel. Like, I think he had actual good intentions. And then, you know, of course, you have him getting basically brainwashed at the end of the episode. So, like, I think, like, to me anyways, if they were going to have him turn bad, they would have had him plead more, and then the Imperial chick basically like stop the whole thing and basically be like, okay, you're coming with me or something, you know. Like I think if he would have actually been bad, he wouldn't have gotten mind flared.
Yeah. I mean, let's talk about that. They mentioned, I think it's Cara Dune in season 1's like, oh yeah, you know, if the New Republic catches me, they're gonna attach me to a mind flare, and I'm gonna have my mind wiped. And the fact that they actually played the long game and brought that back to season 3 of Mando, and we already know, if you're a fan of Rogue One, if you watched Rogue One, you know Borgola is a mind flayer, and that's what they used back then. And now it's like, okay, now we have the technology years and years later to just do this electronically. And what'd you guys think of that sequence?
Is that what they were going to do to Crosshair last week, by the way, when they captured him?
Oh. No, I don't know. I think they're doing something else with him.
Oh, okay. Okay. Anyways, continue though.
Yeah, I was just saying, I think it was really neat that we get this, like, they're churning an organic procedure into electronic. In other words, like, we're seeing evolution in Star Wars technology, which a lot of times it kind of stays the same, but we're actually seeing like a progression through this sort of thing. It was interesting.
Yeah, no, it was nice. I like what they're going to do with that. It was pretty interesting.
Yeah. Like, I think the biggest thing too to take away from the whole mind flare scene is, you know, I think it won't be this coming episode. Of course, I think we're going to see the Imperial officer girl again. Like, we're going to see a lot of these people again down the road. Maybe not even this season. Like, potentially down the road. But I think one of the best parts about it just shows like the Empire is still ruthless, you know, with their tactics. So like, it was interesting seeing that. It was also interesting seeing the Rebellion, or I guess the New Republic at this time. The New Republic still doesn't mind to be using like kind of sketchy tactics. Like, hey, we're instead of letting just this person become a good person, we're gonna like basically half brainwash them to be good. So like, their tactics, even though they're good guys, are still kind of unethical. Actually, they are unethical. So it's just interesting to see, like, even though they're quote unquote good guys, they still have some shadiness to them. So, you have that. And then, even just some of the little tidbits also we got in the episode, guys, like we hadn't mentioned it yet, but like some of the chatter earlier on in the episode, like if, like when they were talking, Moff Gideon got name dropped.
Oh,
actually.
Yeah. Did they say escaped or something? Like some guy saying, oh, he escaped, but then.
Yeah, the other guy was like, "Oh, he escaped," and the other person was like, "No, I think they locked him up somewhere or whatever." Like they referenced him escaping from a transport. I feel like that's got to be true, right? Like you'd think.
Yeah, I mean, who else would be sending those fighters? Well, I could tell you a lot of other people that would be sending those fighters, but I don't know. I selfishly want to see that scene when he gets on the tribunal. I think that'd be really cool, seeing like Mon Mothma out there, seeing like how the New Republic deals with the people. But yeah, I mean, transitioning this conversation, last topic for tonight would be just our first real good look at the New Republic. We've seen it mentioned numerous times, and even the first episode, like Grief Karga's like, "Oh, take that up with the New Republic," as like a side joke. Like it's like, yeah, they're not going to do crap. I know. So it's interesting seeing how that's happening. How we have another desk job in Star Wars, another thing I like to see. It's just like poor old Pershing just having to erase everything. And the fact that the New Republic is like, it's not utilizing technology, but it's also not like looking at history or something. They're just erasing everything. And, we see this like 20 years later, how the thing collapses and people just don't care about it anymore. So I thought they did a great job of, again, showing us the New Republic. Again, like, didn't do a great job of doing it in the sequels, didn't show us Coruscant in the sequels, but to see it here was interesting. We're finally getting to like shed some light on that organization and why we could see its downfall already being predicted at this point.
Yeah, I mean, look, it was, I think you mentioned earlier, it was fascinating and nice to see the ins and outs of what the everyday life is when it comes to Star Wars. So that was a huge takeaway for me for that particular scene.
Oh yeah, I completely agree with you both. Like for me, it was cool just getting to see more of it because like you mentioned, Chris, like if we get the Gideon stuff, it would be cool seeing Gideon in front of those public figures, in front of like on Coruscant, all this stuff. And heck, if he escapes, then cool. But like it's just cool getting more of that New Republic stuff because just think about it, guys. Like years ago when the Aftermath trilogy came out, would we ever thought we would have been getting like an actual Star Wars show with Coruscant and with all of this stuff? So like it's cool actually getting to see like where Star Wars is now. This is stuff we'd only picture, I would say, in like, books and like comics and video games and stuff, because in terms of like a movie, you don't have enough time to explore this. Like, 3 episodes of this show is equal to one of the Star Wars movies for the most part. So like it's just it's definitely great getting to see the New Republic how it is, and I feel like we're going to keep on continuing to see the New Republic in this season and Mando season 4, and then the other Star Wars shows like Ahsoka and so on and so on. Like I feel like we're going to keep getting more and more in depth with the New Republic. I mean, heck, eventually. Maybe if we, like, later on down the road in season 4, if we get more of the New Republic stuff, who knows, we might get, like, a deep fake, how they did with Luke, Han, and Leia eventually down the road. Like, you never know, because Leia would be highly around during this time.
Oh, yeah.
So, like, that's always something on the table. Like, every time we're on Coruscant, like, conceivably, during this episode with Pershing right now, conceivably Leia's just, like, a few hundred miles away, like, somewhere else. That's just something to think about.
So I did a video on this. Let me like push up the glasses on my nose. So actually, at this time, the Galactic Republic's capital is now on Chandrila. And
Oh
they
yeah, I forgot
every
about
couple of
that.
years they switch it around. They switch it around the core. Eventually, it'll become Hosnian Prime, which gets destroyed. So yeah, my first reaction to seeing Coruscant, the way it looked, I actually thought that Coruscant would be like disheveled, destroyed, just like a mess. But it still looked like, those people that were talking to Pershing right after were very much regal type people, nobles and stuff like that. I was like, oh wow, so this place still has a lot going for it, because what happened, I have a whole video on this, but real quick, Cliff Notes version. There was a lot of riots after Return of the Jedi. You have the character of the Grand Vizier that is basically Masumeda is trying to hold the place together. Of course, no reinforcements came because they all went to Jakku, and eventually the New Republic just like got him out of there, and he had to be forced to make the peace treaty and all that stuff. So I thought really Coruscant was going to be losing its luster and crappy looking. So I was pleasantly surprised that it still looks pretty good, for even though it's not like the major center of attention anymore for the politics and the governments, at least.
Interesting. Well, heck, even at that, talking about New Republic, we've seen Coruscant. Maybe eventually, kind of like Clone Wars did for the prequel trilogy, maybe eventually we'll just get a bunch of Hosnian Prime stuff in some of these shows just backdropped in there, because then that'll actually make us value Hosnian Prime getting blown away in The Force Awakens. Like, maybe we'll get a whole 3 episodes dealing with Hosnian Prime related planets. Like, of course, we could be still dealing with Mando and Bo-Katan and all these characters, but if it's in like the Hosnian Prime system eventually, then that would actually value that moment in The Force Awakens.
Yeah. So we have Derpy Entertainment. I'm watching the episode right now, and it just occurred to me that the woman that tricked the scientist has to be working with someone. They have no motivation in the timeline. My theory is Thrawn, but just a theory. And we're going to end with that. So, yeah, I mean, by all means, I mean, I took it that she's some kind of double agent, right? I mean, she turns up the crank. She's trying to basically fry his mind. I think she does that. I think she fries his mind so that the New Republic can't use any of the information. So she was sent by somebody to be like, okay, you got to take care of this guy before he squeals. He can't be telling him too much about what's happening. You got to go in there on the inside and make sure he's done, So I feel like that could be what that purpose is, but maybe somebody has a different idea than me, but that's what occurred to me.
I mean, so that sounds reasonable to me.
Yeah. Yeah, I think that's the exact direction they're going. I think it's going to we're eventually going to get to the Thrawn stuff. Like, that's going to be eventually down, like, whether it be the end of this season. Like, that's my overarching big prediction of this season. I think we're going to get a Thrawn reference eventually, probably in the finale. But I could see this kind of being the stepping stone where she is doing this for Gideon, and then we'll see Gideon eventually report to Thrawn. Because I've said it from the first season. Gideon isn't big enough to be the big villain of this entire scope of shows. He's not. So, like, it's just, even though I love Giancarlo Esposito, it's just, I feel like his character specifically, it just isn't big enough yet to be the big bad. So I think he's just, like, she's the stepping stone to Gideon, and Gideon's the stepping stone to Thrawn. Like, because eventually we're going to get Gideon reporting to Thrawn or something along those lines, I feel like.
Yeah, and so with that being said, let's see how much we valued this episode. We're going to give our thoughts and scores out of 10. I'll throw it over to Milton.
Yeah, overall, I understood both stories. I understood what the stories meant, and the overall theme of this episode to me was redemption. Mando and Bo achieved it. Pershing thought that's what he was doing. However, it didn't work out for him. This could have been told in 2 separate episodes, in my opinion. I felt like they crammed 2 episodes into one. To me, it made this episode very unattractive to me. Again, I'll go back and rewatch this eventually, but to me, it just felt too cluttered, too much. Could have been 2 separate episodes. However, both stories told separately, I think, were fine. Love the visuals, love the dogfights, love the Coruscant. I mean, anytime we're on Coruscant, I'm a perk up and watch, because Coruscant is a childhood thing for all of us. So this episode wasn't trash. I'm very clear to say that. So I think from to be fair, if I had to individually score these episodes, they're very high because they're both together, and I don't like how they put them together.
Yeah.
It's a 7.5.
Okay. That's fair. And, when it goes on with the episode, a lot of it is editing. So, yeah, editing could have been improved. I agree with that. That's why I'm giving this. I'm also going to give this, I'm going to give this an 8 out of 10. Really great world building. Transitions, as we keep saying, could have been done better. But I really liked the story as a whole. Everything that Milton said. Just loved all the little Easter eggs. Fantastic production values. I mean, gosh, looking at those TIE interceptors and that move that Bo-Katan pulled off right at the end there, she like puts up one of the wings and just spins around 180. It's like, what the heck? This is Star Wars on a small screen. So yeah, throwing it over to Ben.
Yeah, for me, I think the episode overall, I could agree with both of you guys on a lot of your points. Like, I think the overall episode was pretty solid. We had some really good stuff at the beginning and end. We had some solid stuff in the middle. To me, the action was really good. The stories of each arc or each piece of the episode, I think both stories were very good. As for what they were, and just overall like the implications of like the Empire still being around. I think that was redemption, obviously, for all the characters involved: Mando, Bo-Katan, all of them. Like, redemption for them, and then just the overall like the Empire still being around, I think was my big takeaway from this week's episode. And then of course, as you mentioned, Chris, like there's plenty of Easter eggs, and of course going back to Coruscant's really nice. So this is a funny thing. So like I said, when I'm watching these episodes at 3 a.m, my first thought when we got into like the more middle part of the episode, I was thinking of Chris. I was like, man, he's gonna like this because this is like Andor. And then literally as soon as we went to Coruscant, my first thought, I looked over at my buddy and I said, oh man, Milton's gonna love this going to Coruscant, because like that was my first thought was Milton. I was like, yep, he's gonna love this stuff. So yeah, like I think overall like expanding the show and expanding the planets we're going to is really nice. Even though we've been to Coruscant obviously before in other shows and movies, it's great getting to see it in this form. And overall, I just think it's a good stepping stone in this coming week with having Filoni involved with writing the next episode. I think it's going to be a good kind of bounce off point leading into next week. I really do.
Yes.
So with that, as you mentioned, Milton, I could score each of these episodes individually, but since they were put together and not edited the best, I would have to give this one a 7.5.
All right, 2 7.5s and an 8, so we're pretty close on our scores there. Half a point off for transitions. Got it.
Yep.
Oh man,
I'll be real though. If this episode was spliced up a little more evenly, if Mando was spread out throughout, this would be an 8.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, like they could have dealt with the mythosaur, come out there, go on their ship. And then before the space flood, they could have done like maybe 20 minutes of the Pershing stuff, then cut back to, oh, here we are,
Yep.
we're being attacked. And yeah, I could see that. So there you go. What were your thoughts? What were your scores on The Mandalorian? We'd like to see them. We got an 8 out of 10 for Dark Nerdy Gonzo. Oh, yeah. So there we go. So that's going to do it for our look at Mandalorian. Real quick before I forget, I found a fun thing going on Twitter right now. If you follow the Twitter handle at Utini, who deals with a lot of the Star Wars literature, the publishing, they have been doing a March Madness. Every day they're putting up multiple books, and they are allowing us to vote on which book will proceed to the next round. I'm having one heck of a time going through these, because lately it's been like a legend book versus a canon book. They just released the results for Alphabet Squadron versus Rogue Squadron. And man, oh man, that was close. It was like by like 50 votes for Rogue Squadron. And then they just put out like the Rising Storm versus another book. So it's really fun. If you want to get involved, because I missed the days. I don't know if you guys remember this, but at least the StarWars.com, before like all the big Star Wars movies came out, like, 2010s, 11s, whatever, they were doing a Star Wars March Madness with characters. They could like literally go and vote. And I used to love doing that.
Oh yeah, that was always so much fun.
Oh man. So yeah, there you go. So what are you guys going to be up to this week, Milton?
Just have plans getting together with some friends tomorrow, and really not doing much on Sunday. Just like I said, just trying to recover from this past week.
Mm-hmm. There you go. We can follow you where?
You can follow me on Instagram at Milton7Weber, and then Twitter you can find me at MiltonWeber7.
There you go. What about you, Ben?
Yeah, I don't really have too much planned this weekend. Probably just I don't even have shows to catch up on now that Last of Us is gone. I don't really have any shows to catch up on. So I'm probably just gonna find some series or something to start. I was thinking of actually picking up WWE's new game and just trying that out on Xbox.
Oh yeah.
Just because, yeah, that just came out. I don't know if it's on Game Pass yet, but I'm gonna check that out actually. And then and then work out. I'm continuing to diet down like another 2 pounds from last Friday actually, which is really nice. And continuing just work on all that fun fitness stuff. So if you want to find me talking about Star Wars and fitness, you can follow me on Twitter at RealBenMaynard. And if you want to follow along with me posting most of my workouts and just my overall progress on this diet phase, you can follow me on Instagram at RealBenMaynard. There
you go. And as far as for me, as I said, I've been doing those companion videos to Mandalorian. I put out one about, hey, is that the Mythosaur and what is the history of the Mythosaur in Star Wars? I also put out a video about, hey, what happened on Coruscant in between Return of the Jedi and Mandalorian? So I put out that video as well. Go check that out. I also put out reviews for Jedi Battle Scars, which takes place in between Fallen Order and Survivor. I also put out a review for another video game time book, which is Star Wars Hunters Battle for the Arena. So yeah, a lot of Star Wars video game tie-in reviews on the channel that have been uploaded in the last week. So I appreciate if you would go and check that out. Giving a shout out to everybody that has joined us in the chat. We have I Am Super Not, we have Dark Nerdy Gonzo, we have Aaron Daly, we have Derpy Entertainment. Thanks everybody for joining in. And of course, as I said off the top, you can join us every week. We'll be here next week, Friday at 9 o'clock Eastern on this very YouTube channel. And if you are on the go, go ahead and download the podcast on any of your podcast network apps of choice. Just search Outer Rim Transmission. But other than that, this was episode 100 milestone. We're in the triple digits officially on this podcast. We want to thank once again everybody for helping us on our journey to hit episode 100. Here's to 100 episodes of Outer Rim Transmissions coming at you. We got 2 more weeks until celebration, or 3 more weeks, 2 more weeks of this podcast, and I'm going to be going on hiatus for 2 weeks as I gallivant through Europe there. But yes, there's a lot more to talk when we get back from that. But as far as that, we have 2 more episodes of Bad Batch, or 2 more weeks to talk about Bad Batch and Mandalorian. So we look forward to discussing that next time. So for Ben, for Milton, for Chris, aka Starrapter, thank you everybody for joining us and for listening and watching. That's going to do it for episode 100 and transmission. Okay.